if you've been pulled over before for no reason at all other than being black, can you stop your Zoom camera right now? You're still in the session, but just stop your camera. Thanks for that. So just get an idea just of how many people we have on now and the amount of us who have been pulled over for being black. Damon, Winnie, do you have any suggestions or things that we should be aware of when being pulled over for those, in case some of us haven't educated ourselves on our rights when an officer pulls us over?
Let me just make one last point, and then I'll let Winnie address your question. Let's just talk about money. Listen, when we don't complain about these bad apples, it costs us tax dollars, millions of dollars a year, every year on settlements. George Floyd's family is getting millions of dollars, and God bless it, they should get the money. But imagine that officer hadn't been on the force, to Rachel's point, that money would have gone to streets and schools. So when you talk to some of your friends who maybe aren't as inclined on the racial side, well, let's talk about finances. Do you want your city dollars going out to pay settlements, or do you want your city dollars going to educate your kids? So you don't always have to make the racial argument. You can also just make the financial argument. This is not a good investment as for us as a citizenry to have these individuals policing. It's not a good investment. They need to be off the force so that money is better spent on other resources. Go ahead, Winnie.
Are there any studies out there? Hey, are there any studies out there that have that can quantify how much money is spent on these settlements? I mean, I think it's a great point, but how do you take that anecdotal information and make it actionable, right? Hey, we spent, or the state of California or the state of Minnesota has spent X number of dollars to settle these sort of lawsuits.
So all that's open to the public. Mm-hmm. Your state budget, the city budget, is dollars have to be set aside to settle cases. Your city attorney's office gets paid to get paid to defend these officers, and then they essentially get paid to take the case to trial and then pay out. So all this budget information is open to the public. It's that we just aren't choosing to educate ourselves.
Yeah, right. You just got to dig for it. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. And you can access it through a Freedom of Information Act request as well.
Mm-hmm. That's why I think would be a good idea is if these police officers were personally liable. If they did the type of behavior that they're doing, that they should lose their pension. It needs to hit that officer personally and not the city, because as Damon said, if they get sued and they win a lawsuit, the victims win a lawsuit, it doesn't affect the officer. He's still employed, still has a union. The union has lawyers for him. He's not out of pocket anything. He gets paid leave, and we as taxpayers pay for that lawsuit, which is just ridiculous. But back to your point about driving while black, I just want to be really clear. When a police officer stops anybody, you do have to identify yourself. Whether you give them your name or you just simply give them your ID, that is all you are required to do. If they ask you, where are you coming from? I want a lawyer. Just be quiet. You don't even have to say that. You are not legally obligated to answer any other questions other than your name. Okay? So if I was stopped by a police officer, I would keep my hands on the steering wheel. I would say, officer, I will give you my name. I'm going to reach into my pocket, or you can reach into my pocket, get my identification. Once they have your identification and run you, you don't have to say anything to them. Because what my clients routinely do is think they can talk themselves out of either an arrest or a ticket. You're never going to do it. Don't even try. These cops are trained to psychologically screw with you. Hey, buddy, how you doing? Where you coming from? Oh, we coming from that liquor store? And they already know there was a robbery from that liquor store. So you've already put yourself at the crime scene based on your words. So I would comply with the officers other than running your mouth, because there's nothing you're going to say that's going to stop them or change their mind. Please know that. I don't care how friendly, how nice they are. It's not going to happen. If you happen to have a cell phone and you can get it recorded before you actually stop, I would do it. I wouldn't make movements when you're stopped because they'll say, oh, he made a furtive movement. I feared for my life and I shot. Don't move. Once you have stopped that car, keep your hands on the steering wheel and keep still. Okay? And if they ask for your name, give them that. But other than that, please don't talk to them. They're not your friends and they're not in the business of being chummy with you just because.
Yeah, and to Winnie's point, I try to tell people all the time, listen, we fight not in the street because you're going to lose that. They have guns, batons. We fight in the courtroom. So in the street is not really the best place for you to try to assert your constitutional rights or what you think your constitutional rights are. You should follow Winnie's advice. Keep your mouth closed. Keep your hands where they can see them. And then if there is an issue, we can deal with it in court. And when you talk about the pitches motion, a lot of us who turn off our cameras right now because we got harassed, how many of us actually complained about that officer? It would probably be 0%. So if you have an unfortunate experience with an officer, you do need to make a complaint so that complaint gets registered. That does have detrimental impact to that officer, including promotion, and it can help public defenders like Winnie if there's a case involving an officer down the line. So I encourage you to complain if you have a legitimate basis to complain. I encourage you to assert your constitutional rights in a courtroom and not on the street.